Welcome. This hopefully should be our last video for this particular series that I've been doing for my research class. In this particular video, I'm going to be showing you how to perform multiple regression in Microsoft Excel 2007. I will also show you how to calculate the correlations for not just two variables, because we've already seen that before. I'm going to show you how to calculate the relationship of several variables at the same time. That is the goal of this particular video. Okay, here we are inside Microsoft Excel. We have our data here. In the example that I'm going to be using for you in this particular presentation, I have four variables: university support, social support, classroom environment, and academic confidence. Now, in my particular study, I want to see basically how university support, social support, classroom environment, how these influence academic confidence. In other words, to make it simple, university support is an independent variable. Social support is an independent variable. Classroom environment is an independent variable. And the dependent variable in my example is academic confidence. Now, you know where these numbers came from. As you can see that there are many different questions in my particular survey that I use, many different items, that I use. And what you have to do is you have to find the average for each variable. So for example, if items 1 through 15 were what I used to measure university support, I would take the average for items 1 through 15 for each person to get the overall average. You are using the means here to determine the regression equation. So for social support, if items 16 through 25 represent social support, I take the average score for that. So for this first person, it was 4, and then I find the average for those questions 16 to 25 for each person. You already know how to calculate the mean for a variable. I have shown you that in a previous lecture. There's no need for me to repeat that. But you must calculate the average for each variable in order to do the regression equation. That is very important. You are not putting individual items into the regression analysis. You are taking the average score for the overall variable, for each variable, in order to calculate the regression equation. And again, you already know how to do that, and I also showed you that in a previous video that is available on Sara. Having said that, let's move to the heart of today's lesson. Click on data. Over here is data analysis. This should already be on your computer. Again, that was shown in a previous video. Click data analysis. And we are going to go down here to what we call regression. The benefit of regression is that it shows you the strength of how several variables influence one dependent variable. What we did in previous lessons was what we called a simple correlation. We just looked for the relationship between two variables. Now we're looking at how several variables, how they relate to one dependent variable. And this is very useful and powerful for, as you know from the chapter, for predicting and for explaining things. Again, if you're unfamiliar with what I just said, please go look at the chapter on correlation that we talked about several weeks ago. So I'm going to click OK after I highlight regression here. I need to clear out my data here. This is from previous examples. Now, the first column at the top asks you for the input Y range. So it asks you for the information for the dependent variable. In my study, it is academic confidence. So I'm going to highlight all of this and put in all my data. Then I'm going to put in my information for my dependent variables. Now this is slightly different from previously. I'm going to highlight several columns in order to do this. I'm going to highlight university support. That is one of my independent variables. I'm going to highlight social support. That is another of my independent variables. And I'm going to highlight classroom environment. That is my last independent variable. And get all my information here. Done. Now, I'm going to click on labels. This tells the computer that the first row is my label for each variable. If I don't do that, I'll get an error message because Excel reads numbers. It does not read letters. One last thing I have to deal with is an output range. So I select here and I have to put some place that I want to spit out my data. I'm going to put it right here in this little column right here. Having done all that, everything should be okay. Let's see what happens. All right, so here's all my information. I'm going to make my columns and everything a little bit bigger. There's a lot of information here that you are not familiar with, at least things that I have not taught you. So let's not worry too much. Let's just focus on the things you need for the class. All right. This first number here is the multiple regression. It is the correlation. It is how much the different variables have in common. The overall score here is 0.35, which is not that amazing. There's some sort of a relationship there, but not very strong. Remember, our cutoff point as a recommendation is 0.4, a little below that. The R-squared tells you how much influence the dependent variables have on the independent variable. And so here, the score is 0.12, which is very, 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 very low. So in other words, university support, social support, and classroom environment, they don't have a lot of influence on affecting a student's academic confidence. It doesn't explain a lot, in other words. These other values here over here, adjusted R-squared, doesn't matter as much. Standard error, observations, this is just how many participants. So for observation, 276 people participated in my study. This is a study I did several years ago, and I had a very large sample here. All this down here, the regression, residual, total, you don't need to know what this means. All that matters here is the significance. If this number is very small, it means that your data is significant. In other words, it's different from the population. So here, my model is significant. But that's all you need to know about that. For the rest of this stuff, for this class, you don't really need this. But this information right here under coefficients, this is what you use to make the equation, the regression equation, if you so desired. But we're not going to worry about that. One other thing to look at is the p-value. As you can see here, remember, for the p-value, it must be less than 0.05. So my relationship of university support to academic confidence is not significant because the p-value is 0.49 when it should be 0.05. Also here for social support is not significant. This is much bigger than 0.05 and 0.7. But classroom environment was significant. So two of my variables are useless. One variable is valuable. So classroom environment clearly influences academic confidence. Social support does not. University support does not. Very, very valuable. Now, there's one last thing that I need to show you, and that is how to make the correlation table. So we're going to click on data analysis like I just did. We're going to go up here to correlation. You've seen this before, but now we're going to do it for several variables. Let me clear this out. Unclick this. Clear this. All right. So input range. All of my variables are going to be highlighted here. So I select all four variables: university support, social support, classroom environment, and lastly, I highlight academic confidence. Labels are in the front row, in the first row. And now we have to click an output range. I'm going to put it right here underneath my other information, and I'm all done. And so you can see the relationships right there. Again, this is the correlation between them. And so this helps you to see how strong the relationships are between the various variables. So that's it. A very, very simple analysis tool that is used in Microsoft Excel. We looked at how to do multiple regression in Excel. All you do is you have to use data analysis, click on regression, highlight the Y input range, which is your dependent variable, highlight the X input range, which is your various independent variables. Use that information, click OK, and then you have several different tables you need to look at. You're looking at the multiple R, you're looking at the R square. The R square just tells you how much influence the different independent variables have on the dependent variable. The higher the R square, the more explanatory power the various independent variables have on the dependent variable. So in my study with academic confidence, university support, social support, and classroom environment had an overall R square of 0.12. 0.12. In other words, they don't explain a lot about why somebody might have high academic confidence or low academic confidence. If my R square had been higher, like say 0.8, I could say strongly that when people's perception of the university is high, when people's perception of their social support is high, when people's perception that the classroom environment is great, they have lots of academic confidence. That's how it works. So when the independent variables are high, it explains why the dependent variable is high. So if somebody has high academic confidence, you can be like, what is causing that? You look at the independent variables and it explains. Another thing that you can do with regression is that it can predict. So if I know someone's perception of university support, if I know someone's perception of their social support, if I know someone's perception of their classroom environment, I can use that to predict how much academic confidence they have. Remember, this is just algebra. That's the power of regression. The last thing that we did was I showed you how to make a table that shows you the correlation of several variables at one time. Previously, I showed you how to do a correlation for just 2 variables. But in this example, we had 4 variables all at the same time. Having said that, I hope that this particular video will help you with your regression analysis. Of course, we will spend time in class doing this, so do not worry. You can calculate this. You can do it. Have a good day.